Now that we have defined the optimal consumption point, we're going to see what happens to the optimal consumption point when there are changes in income. We're going to first define normal goods. So here on this graph, we have our indifference curve and the budget line and the tangency point between these two curves. So the indifference curve and the budget line, that's the original optimal consumption point. When income increases, we see on this graph that the consumer is now able to purchase bundles of goods that are on an indifference curve, which provides a higher level of utility to the consumer or a higher level of satisfaction to the consumer. Given that we're on a higher indifference curve, we see here that the consumer is able to consume more of both goods. This leads us to this definition of what normal goods are. If there's an increase in income, if that implies a rise in the consumption of each good, then we're going to say that goods B and goods C are both normal goods. So normal goods are goods such that the quantity demanded increases when income increases. I'm now going to define two different types of normal goods: luxury goods and necessity goods. When the rise in consumption is more than proportional to the rise in income, that good is called a luxury good. When the rise in consumption is less than proportional to the rise in income, that good is called a necessity good. If you look on this graph, you see that when income increases, so when the budget constraint shifts to the right and when the indifference curves also shift upwards, well, you see that the consumption of C tends to increase in larger proportions, whereas the increase in the consumption of good B tends to increase only in small proportions. This suggests that on this graph, C is a luxury good and B is a necessity good. Another type of good that's different from normal goods, those are called inferior goods. This is the case here if you're looking at these two indifference curves. So you see that these two indifference curves, they satisfy the property that they do not cross, but you see that when income increases, the consumer is shifting the optimal consumption bundle from P1 to P2. P2 is a bundle in which there's a higher quantity of C compared to P1, but it's also a bundle for which there's a lower quantity of B compared to P1. So here, the increase in income implies a decrease in the consumption of good B. So B is said to be an inferior good. An inferior good is such that when income increases, the quantity demanded for that good decreases.